Life. So many different forms of life, often taken for granted. But life is rare. In the vast, infinite universe, we know of only one place that life has sprouted: Earth. And it only exists here because countless organisms, trillions, over billions of years, fought, struggled, adapted, and survived. Nature is resilience. Beauty and brutality intertwine. Systems so vast and intricate, we can only begin to guess at how they work, and yet they endure. Hello, my name is Marco. I am an indie dev working on a coding game codenamed Hive Forge. My goal with this project is to create a coding game that is intuitive, inspired by visual scripting tools I myself have used in the past as a designer and as a teacher, and tools you might have messed around with like Scratch or Lego EV3s. The project is still very much in its early days. I'm experimenting with a bunch of different ideas and directions for this game, but I wanted to start making videos to share my progress and my story with you. Maybe you're someone who is into coding games and you're interested in joining my playtests, or you're someone who is into what happens in the background of indie game dev, or you're a fellow dev who is interested in how you can learn from my inevitable fumbles. I'm here to expose myself to you. And in exchange, I hope you'll expose yourself to me as well. That sounds wrong. What I mean is maybe you'll have a lesson to share with me in turn. A neural exchange like mycelium. I am stretching my little tendrils to you right now, whoever you might be. Hello. So this little coding engine I've built is still in its infancy, but I have started to explore different applications for it. The first thing I tried was a little prototype called the Hazel problem, where you get to code the behavior of a hazel tree and try to turn this tiny little hazel sprout into a giant hazel forest. It's a simple little puzzle game. You manage the tree's main resource, glucose, and you choose whether to invest into green mass or brown mass at different stages of your little tree life. It's cute, it's small, I think it's charming, maybe a little bit esoteric. The puzzle aspect of it seems to be successful, and people do like to watch numbers go up, but there's only so much excitement you can get from watching a tree grow. Plus, revisiting grade 7 topics like photosynthesis may have turned some people away, but you can probably tell by the name of this video and by the direction that the Hazel problem took, I'm a bit of a scientist myself, which is why I decided to go with the direction that I did with my next prototype called Xenogenesis. So I wanted to try my hand at a coding game colony sim next. Controlling units through their script seems to be a core part of whatever Hive Forge is going to be. I was inspired by games like Screeps that has a very similar premise. But again, I wanted to focus on making the programming very intuitive and accessible. I especially liked the idea of being able to code different types of units that you can spawn on demand, similar to how insects do it in real life, having very specialized castes within the same species. Bees and ants have these different castes with wildly different body types for different roles. The queen's role is only to reproduce, the soldier's role is to defend, the worker's role is to work. There's even that one species of ants where the one caste's role is just to block the door, so they just have a huge head that they block the door with, like they are the door. So lots of ideas for different units you might have, but I really hit a wall when I was brainstorming what kind of enemies this colony might have. It's very common for colony sim games to have a recurring raid mechanic, an invasion of enemies, a threat that you have to face off against. But I didn't just want to do another generic type of unit that was very similar to the units that the player was creating. I wanted something different, I wanted something alien, and so I did what I always do when I am stuck creatively. I picked up the phone and I called my good friend, David Attenborough. I went to watch some nature documentaries, and that is when I fell in the mycelium hole. So fungi are incredible. A whole third branch to the tree of life we know very little about. They're basically aliens living here on Earth. Not a plant, not an animal, but get this, actually closer to animals than plants. Their mycelium networks, little networks of root-like tendrils, works surprisingly similar to our own neural pathways, passing information chemically, much like our own neurons do. And that was perfect. It paired up beautifully with the hive mind theme I was going for. It's uncanny, it's mysterious, and it looks cool. I thought it would be a good idea to build an enemy inspired by that. Something that my units would have to defend against. Pathological enemy. And I did not know what I was signing up for. So I had to build a brand new pathfinding system. Surprisingly or not, there is a lot of research already on how Mycelium find their way. Slime mold seems surprisingly good at solving mazes, and there are programmers out there who are trying to figure out if there's something to learn from the way they do their pathfinding. My first attempt was a simple wall following algorithm. The units would head straight towards their target, but then the second that they hit a wall, they would split into two, follow that wall until there is no longer a wall between them and the target, and then continue towards the target. Getting the wall following actually wasn't that difficult at all. When the tendril hits the wall, it splits into two, and then just follows a line perpendicular to that wall's normals. When then you hit a corner that gets a little bit more complicated, you have to sprout a different segment at that point and kind of realign yourself, but that was okay. The difficult part was actually knowing when to peel away from the wall. It's not enough to know if the wall is between you and the target, because there might be some paths that require you to go away from the target momentarily and then around the wall again. And I wanted an enemy that was smart enough to not just backtrack into areas they've been to already. I also had to raycast around to make sure that there was no wall between it and the target, but also remember the original direction that the target was in when that head first split into two heads, and pass that on to the children. It got messy, it got complicated. I decided to try something else, very completely different. A different type of pathfinding involves a reinforcement-based system. Again, we start heading straight towards the target, but then when we hit a wall, we split and we send a message to all the other possible heads that, hey, don't come in this direction. And so when every other head is trying to decide which direction to go, they will calculate not only a path towards the target, but a path that avoids that section. So the target has a certain pull, there's a bias towards the target, and then walls have a certain push that push the heads away from them. This actually worked extremely well as a kind of simulation, if you will, except when it came to performance. That is because every time a head hit a wall, it would just split into another two heads, and that head would sure go away from the wall for a little bit, but then return back towards the wall and split again into two heads. It ended up having very small bounces off the wall and up and around, and all of them were dropping markers. And every time I tried to leave Unity, the whole thing would crash. Later on, I found out the real culprit. I thought I was being smart by decoupling the vines, by making them call a Unity event every time they were to send a signal to all other vines. And then the core would listen to those events and register them. Turns out, Unity events are not as lightweight as I thought. Unity events are not built for hundreds of rapid-fired events in every single frame. Don't do that. In the end, what I actually did was hybridizing those two different systems. A unit will use the signal following method until it hits a wall, and at that point, it will split into two and use the wall following method. All the while following the wall, it will sample whether the wall is still there, and if it does find a wall, it will send in a signal. And once it's no longer touching the wall, it returns back to that signal following mode. As a final touch, I added these exploratory tendrils that honestly don't serve much of a purpose, except they look like Mycelium do. And when an exploratory tendril, which is faster than the actual head of the segment, goes out and touches a wall, it too can send a signal. So it does kind of warn the head beforehand to not go a certain direction. All right, now here's the kicker. Figuring all of that out took a whole weekend, 2 whole days of a questionable amount of caffeine, hitting myself against the wall, covering my keyboard in crumbs. And all the while, I kept hearing voices in my head, not the bad kind of voices in your head, the good kind of voices in your head, the voices of my mentors and all those game dev YouTubers that I look up to saying, fail fast, fail faster, this is taking too long. This is not supposed to take so long. This is a prototype. And by the end of those 2 days, I genuinely thought I had made a huge mistake. Here I was, spending 2 whole days on an enemy I wasn't even sure was going to work, trying to get it to function like Mycelium, when maybe I should have actually been working on the part of the game that players would actually interact with the most, the coding, the unit creation, the important bits. And conventional wisdom says that you should take the amount of days that you spend working on a prototype and then multiply that by the amount of years, and that's how many years you need to make the game. And I just pictured myself working 2 years on a single enemy for this game, and I thought that was absurd. So I moved on. I built the rest, the units, the coding, everything else, and I didn't touch the spore vine, that's what I'm calling it, at all, until the very end. But finally, when I put those two pieces together, the enemy and the units, everything kind of started to click. It actually felt like maybe I had something there with this mycelium-like enemy. And now after releasing Xenogenesis, it seems to be a highlight of what people comment on. It's a novel type of enemy, and people enjoy building walls to defend against it and trying to guess at how it is that this enemy thinks. And suddenly those 2 days I spent working on it felt like they'd been worth it. And you know what? I learned a lot during those 2 days. I learned more about pathfinding than I did during all my time in game dev school. I learned the real cost of Unity events. That was a big lesson. I learned how to think about emergent behavior and that you don't actually need that complicated of an AI to make an enemy feel alive and responsive. Just some simple rules and some exploratory tendrils, just like nature intended. So, if I have any advice, I'm not a master at all, right? Just passing on what I have learned to you. It would be, generally, the advice to keep prototypes small is good, but it depends on who you are and what it is that you're doing. If you're someone experienced and you are spending those extra days prototyping, polishing, or fidgeting, or honestly showing off, then yeah, move on. Go do something else. But if you're learning all through that time, if you are experimenting with things that you'd never done before, hey, maybe experimenting with things that no one has ever done before, then taking your time is not that bad. And it's not a waste. It's an investment. Struggling is part of learning. This little mycelium creature has taught me a lot as a designer, has really pushed me as a programmer, and also it taught me something else. That maybe the best way to your target is actually taking the long way around. That maybe taking the long way is how you grow the most. I'm not actually going to drop my microphone. That'd be crazy. Thank you for listening to me talk about my little experiment. The Xenotype prototype is out on itch.io. You're free to go and play. I don't like when people give disclaimers about their work, but it's a prototype, okay? So there's bugs in there, but I need to move on with other things. I want to keep trying different things, so I can't spend more time fixing the bugs that are there. Maybe I might do a pass later on, but no promises. But there's more. Currently, there is a challenge in my Discord server to see who can last the longest. The person who manages to last the longest in the game will gain a little Steam gift card as a reward. It goes until November 30th, Sunday. So if you're watching this video, there might be time still for you to go there and play. The links are all in the description. But even if you are too late, you should still join, because guess what? There will be more. There's more coming. More coding games, baby. It's coding games all the way up. We are talking about indie games in there. We are learning together. Have a little co-working channel if you're someone who enjoys sitting in a call and working with people. There is a very promising little community growing in there. Kind of like a little colony, if you will. There's more videos also coming, so feel free to subscribe, hit the alert button down below. This is my first one. I hope I did well. You can let me know what you liked, what you didn't. Engage. How do I end these videos? Goodbye. Get out of my room. What are you doing here? All right, that's enough.